Tom is many things, but we're here tonight because on September 10th, 2025, Dr. Tom Alter, a respected and tenured professor of history at Texas State University, was fired for remarks he made at a socialist conference in his capacity as a private citizen. He was fired without due process, a clear violation of both Texas State University policy and Texas state law. Tom is a published labor historian, a popular teacher and advisor, a proud union member, a father of two, and a socialist activist. And he'll be telling you all about his case tonight. I'm going to turn this over to Tom so he can tell you about his case. Okay. Welcome.
So, thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be with all those who are standing up against fascism and for democratic rights. Just your presence being here signals that. Of course, thank you to all the organizations and individuals who have made this possible. As Erik was saying, I'm here to speak about what happened to me, put it into context of why it happened, and how a fight back can be organized. And it goes beyond the case of just me, just one professor, and has ramifications for all of us who care about democratic rights and social justice. As I said, it didn't start with me, and it does not end with me. So on September 10th, as Erik was saying, I was fired without due process from my tenured associate professor of history position at Texas State University by the university president, Kelly Damphousse, through a social media post. And that's largely how I found out about it. I was at my son's soccer practice. My local Palestine Solidarity group sent out a group text saying we need to have an emergency meeting for Dr. Alter. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I saw the post. That's how I was fired. So this is a clear political act. When you fire somebody, it's not an HR situation. When you put it on Facebook, particularly Facebook, you're speaking to a particular audience with that. Damphousse fired me over comments I had made 3 days earlier in a presentation I gave during an online socialism conference. And I made this presentation on my own time in my personal capacity online from my home office on a Sunday morning. And in none of the conference promotional material was I identified as a Texas State faculty member or an employee. I introduced myself at the beginning as a member of the Texas State Employees Union, the TSEU, which represents all employees of the state of Texas, and as a member of Socialist Horizon. In firing me, Damphousse followed the now familiar right-wing playbook of repressing and defaming political opponents. In his Facebook post announcing my immediate termination, Damphousse claimed I was inciting violence. He provided no evidence of me inciting violence other than making a reference to my online conference talk. The student newspaper at Texas State University published a transcript of my conference talk, and the overwhelming public opinion from those that read the transcript or happened to view my talk online was that I was in no way inciting violence. When Damphousse is presented with this clear, factual evidence, he says he can now not comment because of an ongoing lawsuit, even though initially he had no problem whatsoever in making the bold claim of inciting violence, later adding criminal activity, and that I am a danger to the health and safety of the university community. Said, I've got a daughter who's in choir. My son's in soccer. An active part of the community. And this, I guess, becomes a danger in the eyes of President Damphousse. Damphousse's actions now sound horrifically familiar. Accuse someone of inciting violence or being a domestic terrorist when presented with clear video evidence, deny the evidence and hide under the cloak of an investigation. I lost my livelihood while others, such as Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Severio Villegas Gonzalez, lost their lives. So what was in my conference talk at the center of this controversy? My presentation was a brief overview of working class-based organizing historically and today. I'm a labor historian. That's why I was tapped for this particular talk. In this talk, I praised the civil disobedience actions of anarchists who have put their jobs, bodies, and lives on the line in recent protest against environmental destruction, referring to the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, and the growing militarization of local police forces. And that's a reference to Cop City protest. Civil disobedience has a long and cherished history in the United States. The American Revolution began with multiple acts of civil disobedience, and it continues to be used and was used in the civil rights movements into today. So while praising the civil disobedience actions of anarchists, I critiqued their opposition to the creation of a political party in achieving their theoretical goal of smashing the state. This is a long-standing debate between Marxists and our anarchist comrades that should not prevent us from working together on many fronts. So I asked the question, this was a quote from myself, without organization, how can anyone expect to overthrow the most bloodthirsty, profit-driven, mad organization in the history of the world, that of the U.S. government? I said that. And I'll still stick by that statement. Now, how did my talk even come to the attention of the university president and far-right politicians in Texas? To attend the online conference, one had to pre-register, and the conference had a no recording or live streaming policy. Unknown to conference organizers and attendees, a self-described fascist, that's how this person describes himself, with horribly anti-Semitic and anti-queer views recorded in my talk for her YouTube channel. Besides recording my conference presentation, she also recorded the break period in between conference sessions. This was a weekend online conference. We had multiple sessions from fighting ICE, from Palestinian liberation, trans liberation, and rather than cut the live stream between each session and hope you get everyone back, we kept the stream going. And it was during the break period after my presentation that a conference participant asked me what it was like working at Texas State. Believing the conference is not being recorded and definitely not the break period, I politely answered the question. So what this self-described fascist did was take this break period conversation and made it look like I was part of my conference presentation. It's a pretty crude edit. I mean, if you're actually watching this, you can see there's a clear jump in what's happening. She put it on social media and began a campaign the next day calling for my firing, claiming that in my capacity as a Texas State professor, I was calling for overthrowing the U.S. government. So this is all crazy on the surface. Using my constitutionally protected free speech, I asked a rhetorical question about overthrowing the government and criticized it in the same vein as many have before. I mean, what I said was hardly original at all. Yet, this fascist social media grifter found an eager and willing audience in the form of Texas State President Damphousse. Damphousse, acting on what we now know were orders from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, even though we're not letting Damphousse off the hook whatsoever, violated the constitutional rights of free speech, freedom of association, and due process. And my firing is not an isolated incident at Texas State or across the country. As many of you know, we actually still have a Columbia student who's still from the campus in Palestine, who's still in an ICE detention center as we speak. Now, assaults on higher education and democratic rights in general have been under attack for years. However, the attacks have increased and become more severe in the past 2 years. This began with the bipartisan government repression of people protesting the genocide in Palestine, especially on college campuses. So with liberal institutions such as universities either ignoring or participating in the repression of free speech and the right to assemble over Palestine, this opened the door for new layers of attacks on the rights of free speech and assembly. So the cause of Palestinian liberation was and remains the axis around which much of our struggles today revolve around. Just like the Black Lives Matter protest of 2020, the Palestinian flag and keffiyehs are ever present on the ongoing anti-ICE protest. Now, amid this ongoing genocide, the United States is experiencing a deepening economic crisis while its empire internationally is weakening. Though weakened, the U.S. empire is still the strongest in the world. It is facing more competition, making it extremely dangerous, grabbing what it can and gravitating to its traditional spheres of influence in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is seen recently in the missile strikes on Caribbean and Pacific fishermen, the bombing of Venezuela and the kidnapping of its president, along with the cruel tightening of the blockade of Cuba. Iran fits into this analysis of the United States gravitating to its traditional sphere of influence when you look at the post-World War II world, where Iran was one of the first places where the United States intervened when it emerged, along with the Soviet Union, as two of the lone superpowers, when the United States crushed the democratic movement in Iran that had overthrown the Shah and put the Shah back in place. So this is what I mean. In the post-World War II world, Iran is the United States as one of its traditional spheres of influence. Domestically, many Americans voted for Trump based on the economy, but we know where that has gone, as Trump has shown that he cares very little about the economic suffering of working and middle-class Americans. And there are signs that we are about to enter a worldwide recession. Gold and silver prices are going up. That's a sign that the economic elites are looking for a safe harbor to protect their finances. And this AI bubble is surely going to burst soon. So ruling elites in the United States are no longer pretending to be defenders of democracy. It is now an all-out empire and money grab. Capitalism's march towards fascism and war is now more apparent than ever. And U.S. elites are on the offensive, both domestically and internationally. This offense is often sloppy. We're saying, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense, what they're doing. They're just really throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks and see what happens and see what the response will be from what they can get away with. Well, what has been the response? Trump's economic policies, along with the U.S. funding of Israel, the attack on Venezuela, the war with Iran, and ICE agents terrorizing communities are not popular. We are seeing a growing resistance on all of these fronts, with people looking for answers and a way to fight back. It's because we are fighting back. We said, no, this is not the world we want. And this is why they have moved towards authoritarianism and fascism. I was fired for being a unionist and a socialist who supposedly incited violence. What did I say in my talk? I called for defending transgender people, opposing ICE, and for people to join the picket lines of hotel workers in Houston who were then on strike against Hilton. These are popular actions. The struggle for trans liberation is visible across the country. The Houston hotel workers, many of them immigrant women, won their strike. And strike actions remain popular. It's been a while, just listing all of them had been occurring. The nurses' strike stand out. I had the honor of going to the picket lines in San Francisco. The teachers that are on strike in San Francisco, after 3 days on strike, they won their strike. So defending trans people, supporting strikes, and opposing ICE are all popular. And socialism itself is popular. If you look at polls, and it's like 39% among all Americans, even though socialism is a very loaded word. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And when you look at young people, you look at that group between like 18 and 29, socialism has a favorability in the 60%. And you see this most vividly in the election of Zoran Mandani as election of New York City. Now, in response to Mandani's election, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has publicly declared he is, quote, targeting leftist ideologies and socialism in Texas. So the lines are being drawn between, as Rosa Luxemburg said, between socialism and barbarism. Now, this story does not end on a down note, and it hasn't ended. It hasn't ended in defeat. I was fired on a Wednesday night, and the next morning, Texas State students were out protesting my firing and did so for 5 school days straight, with actions still ongoing. My unions, the TSCU, had an organizer at my home the next day, and the Texas AAUP provided me with a lawyer, and a lawsuit has been filed. Academic associations, it's about all the major historical associations, have put out statements in my defense and also in defense of academic freedom. And dear to me, networks of socialist organizations went into action across the world. And, as you've heard, a committee to defend Tom Alter, I still stumbled over that, was formed as a nonpartisan committee to defend free speech. And as I mentioned, unions have been key to this. Texas is a right-to-work state, meaning that public employees, while having the right to be in a union, do not have a right to collectively bargain or go out on strike. These are the main tools that working people need to defend our rights. So unions were often seen, what's the point of a union in Texas? And they could not see much power in a union. However, both my unions, the TSCU and the AAUP, have shown how unions can fight back and organize a campaign of resistance. And the power of a union is no longer abstract. Bread and butter issues are extremely important, but also the fights for free speech and democratic rights. And membership in both the TSCU and the AAUP have more than doubled at Texas State in response to our fight back. And statewide membership in the Texas AAUP has doubled. This tour began with 10 days in California, followed by stops in Pittsburgh, Ohio, here in Chicago. Next, I'll be at Texas A&M, College Station, off campus. I can't be there if you're familiar. I could spend a whole talk talking about what's going on at A&M. I'm also going to be in Houston, Vermont, Connecticut, Philadelphia, New York, with more tours being organized. Through this tour, we're connecting with others who have faced direct repression, assisting in creating coalitions, building unions, and joining calls for May Day protests across the country. Resistance is possible, and there is joy in resistance. Join a union, join an organization. People are looking for ways to fight back. And this campaign has offered a way for people to fight back, connecting all of our struggles for democratic rights. Our enemies have hatred and resentment. We have love and solidarity. And through the power of our class, the working class, organized through struggle, a better world is possible. Thank you all.